So, what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a syndrome, which means that a various number of symptoms come up that are very similar and consistent. However, the causes and effects of those symptoms can vary in a wide array. Now, schizophrenia itself is defined as the lifelong term of psychotic episodes. So psychosis is just one event, and it does not mean that someone is schizophrenic. A lot of people are susceptible to having a psychotic event, but they don't become schizophrenic. I want that to be noted. So the positive symptoms of psychosis are things that add to a person's experience, such as hallucinations, delusions, disordered speech, thoughts, and behavior. Things, again, that add to a person who is suffering from psychosis. And negative symptoms are the inverse. They take away from a person who suffers from psychosis and schizophrenia. Things like motivation, connections, they have a lack of emotion and a lack of speech. And these are the most common. There are cognitive symptoms, which affect how a person's brain thinks. Things like concentration, memory, the ability to make decisions, as well as determine if a problem is apparent in front of them and how to solve that problem that has confronted them. So again, what is psychosis? It is that one singular event that someone can have due to various triggers that we'll talk about later. And again, psychosis has all of the symptoms that we described, the positive, negative, and cognitive, and we'll go into the positives right now. The hallucinations are experiencing what isn't real, things that have to do with the five senses that a person has. And no matter what, you cannot convince someone going through this event that they are not real, because they are so real to them that you cannot convince them. Now, delusions, on the other hand, and this is the difference, delusions are beliefs, while hallucinations are those senses, those experiences that I talked about. So delusions are things like someone's following you, or the government is doing X, Y, and Z, and there are various ranges of seriousness to figure out if someone is going through that. Now, disorganized thoughts and words and behaviors, actions, you can most commonly figure this out through something called a word salad, where someone throws out words, some of them don't make sense, some of them are fake, some of them are fake words the user is making up, unaware of this. Now, the brain of someone going through a psychotic episode has a number of increased receptors in the brain, but a loss of tissue within the brain. And specifically, the areas of tissue loss in the brain are the frontal and the temporal lobe of the brain, dealing with cognition and the senses. Now, people going through these events do not have a worse life where they're going to be admitted to asylum forever. Some of them have great lives, and you need to understand the experiences that others have had. Now, there are simulations about what it's like to go through a psychotic episode. Most of them, from what I have heard, are very accurate. Some are extreme, just to get the point across. However, they are out there. They're on YouTube and other video sources where you can understand. Now, Eleanor Longden, the girl on the right, she did a beautiful TED Talk where when she first discovered that she had psychosis and schizophrenia, that the voices that she heard within her head each had a meaning, and then she used the voices to solve issues with herself. So she cooperated with this and learned from it. Now, there are various people that you might know throughout history that have had schizophrenia. People like Van Gogh, Edward Einstein, who was Albert Einstein's son, which you can see on the series Genius, and A Beautiful Mind, where the man on the right is John Nash, and he has a whole movie based around him, which is called The Beautiful Mind, and it is a great movie. He is a Nobel Memorial Prize winner, born in 1928, and what's important about him is that he shows you can have a successful life of 86 years while going through schizophrenia specifically paranoid schizophrenia, at the age of 31. Now, what are the causes? Now, we don't know the causes, we know some triggers. Now, there are hereditary triggers, stress triggers, there are various uses of hallucinogenics and prenatal viruses, prenatal being before or during pregnancy. All these things can trigger these events to happen more quickly. Now, with hereditary, people whose parents have schizophrenia have a 10% more likely chance to be schizophrenic, and people who are identical twins and their identical twin has schizophrenia have a 40% more chance. These are not guaranteed. These are simply statistics based on what we know. Now, looking at stress, when you look at a patient who is suffering psychosis, 3 months beforehand, you see stress levels increasing. 3 weeks, you see a major event. And stress is just a chemical of cortisol. So we talked about the increased number of receptors, cortisol going into those receptors. Now, prenatal issues, again, talking about before or during a pregnancy, various infections and viruses can increase the odds that a child will be schizophrenic later in life or suffer more events of psychosis. Things like rubella, the influenza, very common things that happen. Now, the use of hallucinogens, again, these are not causes, these are simply triggers to a psychotic event. Various drugs like THC and LSD, as well as psychotropic mushrooms, all can trigger the effects of psychosis.